Hey folks, lyarri here. Today reacting to these stupid trucks are literally killing us by not just bikes. Someone recommended this video. I've actually been meaning to react to this channel before, so I'm excited. Let's go.
I make videos about how walkable cities are more efficient, more environmentally friendly, more financially sustainable, and just better places to live.
I like
So given
walkable
these
cities.
benefits, it's not surprising that cities all around the world are trying to build more mixed-use walkable neighborhoods and viable alternatives to driving. Unfortunately, as engineers, planners, and advocates try to repair the mistakes of the 1960s and build the cities of the future, there's a growing trend that could undo all of that hard work: the growth of SUVs and light trucks. I really don't think it's an exaggeration to say that if there's a positive goal that cities have for the future, SUVs fight against that. They're just bad for cities. Really bad. If you're walking and you get hit by an SUV, you're 3 times more likely to die than if you've been hit by a regular car. And if you're in that regular car, you're more likely to die in a crash if it's with an SUV. SUVs are more likely to hit people in the first place because they're big, unwieldy, and have poor visibility. SUV drivers themselves are twice as likely to be killed in a rollover than car drivers. SUVs make congestion worse because they take up more space on the roads, they have terrible fuel economy too, and the list goes on and on. And to be completely honest, I'm making this video because I'm absolutely fed up with the conversation around SUVs and light trucks. We're constantly being told that doing anything about the astronomical growth in the average size of motor vehicles would infringe on the freedoms of people to do whatever they want.
So big.
But your freedom to swing your arm ends where my face begins, and SUVs are a giant punch in the face to everyone who doesn't drive one. In short, SUVs are oversized, ridiculous, unnecessary death machines that are literally killing people, even their own drivers. So let's look at why they're so popular.
Aren't they like marketed on like safety because you feel like you're big and stuff?
If you went back in time about 40 years, you
And
wouldn't
driving
really
kids.
see any SUVs. If you lived in a rural area, you might see a small pickup truck or a bare-bones Jeep used for hunting or farming. But until fairly recently, pretty much everybody drove a car or maybe a van. But today, light trucks and SUVs make up almost 80% of all new car sales in the US. 80%. The auto industry has been heavily pushing these vehicles for years, and it's been done to avoid regulations, meaning more profit for car manufacturers. This is possible because in America, SUVs are classified as light trucks, which aren't subject to the same safety and emission standards as cars. Light trucks originally referred to commercial vehicles that needed to carry or tow heavy loads or traverse difficult terrain. To facilitate this, light trucks have large engines and stiff frames, both of which are disastrous for fuel economy and safety, but more on that in a second. And it all started because of these f***ing chickens. In 1962, Europe placed a heavy import tax on American chickens. In retaliation, America levied import taxes of their own.
Walkable.
They specifically targeted European light trucks that were typically used by small businesses, and since foreign automakers were already producing better and cheaper cars, the declining American auto industry really wanted to shift to a vehicle where they didn't have to compete, because, competition is for suckers. So that carved out light trucks as its own category in America, but what really kicked off the explosion of SUVs was, ironically, fuel efficiency regulations. The Corporate Average Fuel Economy, or CAFE standards, required all automobile manufacturers in the US to improve the average fuel economy of their entire fleet or face financial penalties. But here's the catch. American automakers lobbied hard so that light trucks were classified differently than passenger cars. This was necessary, they argued, because unlike cars, light trucks were used by honest, hard-working, red-blooded American patriots like this guy. I asked an AI art program to make this picture for me, which is why he has this dead look on his face, and his pickup has an extra door hanging off the side.
I swear you could tell like frame one it was AI. That looks so weird.
So rather than build cars that met CAFE standards, auto manufacturers were incentivized to get as many people to buy light trucks as possible. The first SUVs could be classified as light trucks because they were built in the same factories and using the same body-on-frame construction as traditional pickup trucks. These SUVs were basically pickup trucks with a longer roof. This allowed American car manufacturers to save a lot of money by using existing design parts and factories, and of course, it also allowed them to avoid any regulations for passenger vehicles, including safety regulations, because these were, after all, light trucks. So this saved the auto manufacturers a lot of money and avoided regulations, but there was a problem. How were they going to convince people to buy a vehicle that was impractical, uncomfortable, ugly, and dangerous? The book High and Mighty, written by a Detroit automobile journalist and published in 2002, documents the history of how SUVs came to be, and it was one of the books that helped radicalize me against car dependency. And while this book is rather out of date today, the history of the SUV is still very relevant. The earliest SUVs were Jeeps marketed to rich guys who went hunting on the weekends. Marketers used this outdoorsy image to lure people who wanted to be cool. Hey, you might live in suburbia and work a super lame desk job in a business park, but you're still the kind of guy who might maybe someday go on a camping trip, and this is the car to do it in. No, don't look at that significantly more practical car over there. Station wagons are for losers and boomers. And this marketing approach saw some modest success, but the real winning strategy was to make scared people feel safe.
Yeah.
Early focus groups showed that Americans were obsessed with crime and violence, so automobile manufacturers took advantage of that. The city is a big scary place. Protect yourself with a big stupid car. That's how we got ads that say, think of it as a 4,000-pound guardian angel. And this one that says, let nature worry about you for a change, which addresses the incredibly common suburbanite problem of crocodiles attacking you from trees. This also turned road safety into an arms race.
You know, that image looked AI generated, I won't lie. It obviously wasn't, but
whoever has the biggest vehicle wins, and so vehicles became bigger and more aggressive every year. It's got to the point where you can't even buy a small, practical, fuel-efficient car in America anymore, even if you wanted to. When we lived in Brussels, for example, we owned a Toyota Aygo, which was perfect for our family, but Toyota doesn't even sell this model in America. I wonder why. So where does it all end? When everyone is driving tanks? Tanks! What a funny joke, right? Except that this is one of the largest Sherman tanks from World War II. And this is a Cadillac Escalade. Yeah. Incidentally, the website where I got these images of cars, SUVs, and trucks, but not tanks, is carsize.com. An excellent and addictive site that lets you easily compare the sizes of many different kinds of vehicles. They were also nice enough to let me use their vehicle photos in this video, so check them out. I put a link in the description, but just type in carsized.com yourself. It's really not that hard. It's incredibly depressing that SUVs were marketed as being safer because their classification as light trucks has been disastrous for actual safety. One of the most dangerous things about SUVs is their bumper height. American cars are required to have bumpers between 16 to 20 inches off the ground. But surprise, light trucks don't have to deal with that regulation, so they can have their bumpers pretty much as high as they want. SUVs were also stiffer than cars. The original light trucks were built to haul or tow heavy weights, which means they needed a heavier, stiffer chassis. Rather than crumpling in a crash like a car frame, which distributes energy and acts as a protective cushion, the chassis on a light truck acted like a battering ram, and the people inside became the crumple zone. Combine that with a high bumper and you run into a problem known as crash compatibility. When two normal-sized cars crash into each other, they are compatible in that their safety features are pretty much aligned and designed to work together, which provides more protection to the drivers of both cars. But when a regular car and an SUV crash into each other, the bigger, higher, stiffer vehicle doesn't line up with the smaller car's safety features, which can make the crash more deadly. Of course, it's even worse for anyone outside of a car. When a person gets hit by a car, they're typically thrown onto the hood. This can cause injury to the lower legs, which sucks, but generally doesn't kill you at low speeds. But the higher front end of an SUV means the impact is centered near the torso and head, which is much more deadly. People hit by SUVs are also more likely to hit their head on the ground or go under the vehicle thanks to their high ground clearance. And in case it isn't obvious, it's a bad thing to be underneath a gigantic, heavy, light truck. And what makes this all even more insane is that most of the features that make SUV drivers feel safe actually make them more dangerous. Many buyers say they wanted an SUV because you sit up high while driving them, which gives better visibility, but that's not really true. It might make it easier to see farther down the road, but it's actually harder to see stuff right in front of you. The advocacy group Kids and
I'm
Cars put
so scared.
17 children in front of an SUV and they couldn't see any of them from the driver's seat. Since the introduction of SUVs, there has been a massive increase in what are called front overs, a person, usually a child, getting run over by an SUV by a driver who can't even see them. Kids and Cars have been documenting the rise of front overs in America, and the results are shocking. But before we move on, I want you to look at this chart and understand what you're seeing. This is saying that over a 10-year period, over 500 American children were killed by being run over by SUVs, usually by their own parents in their own driveways. This is insane. This is legitimately insane. In any civilized society, this information alone would be enough to regulate the hood design of SUVs and light trucks. But instead, the industry solution for this is proximity sensors and front-facing cameras, because car companies are happy for any regulations that means they can sell you more stuff. Now, I personally believe that drivers should be looking at the road and not a screen inside their SUV, but hey, what do I know? I'm just a weirdo who objects to children being run over by trucks.
You
If
don't
you
like
agree
that?
with me, then you can sign the Consumer Reports petition, link in the description. Light trucks are usually four-wheel drive as well, which is pitched as another safety feature.
I
Four-wheel
get
drive
scared
is
too
great for
easily.
accelerating in slippery conditions like mud, but what four-wheel drive doesn't do is help you slow down. That means overconfident SUV drivers can go as fast as they want in bad conditions, as long as they're not planning on stopping. Maybe that's fine in a rural setting, but these land yachts are all over American cities. I once drove across Texas in the middle of a once-in-a-decade snowstorm, and there was literally a light truck in the ditch every few miles, while my rear-wheel drive Oldsmobile pushed through without any issues. Though part of this is because SUV owners are more likely to be bad drivers. That's not just my opinion, car companies paid millions of dollars for market research to find this out. People who gravitate toward SUVs tend to be less confident in their driving abilities and rely on the large size of the vehicle to keep them quote-unquote safe, at the expense of everyone else. What made this even worse is that in the early days, most SUV buyers were assholes. I'm not being flippant and suggesting that all SUV drivers were assholes, but assholes were literally the primary target market when automakers wanted to make SUVs mainstream. Auto industry research determined that the average light truck purchaser was obsessed with status, less likely to volunteer or feel a strong connection to their communities, less giving, less oriented toward others, more afraid of crime, more likely to text and drive, more likely to take risks while driving, and more likely to think stuff like this looks cool. What the? 10 years ago, a baby-faced Mark Rober put plastic animals on the side of the road to see which ones were most likely to get hit. He found that some drivers would purposefully swerve to run over the animals. And 89% of those people who tried to murder animals were driving SUVs. Yep, the market research is correct.
That's
These people
insane.
are assholes. But you know what SUV drivers are typically not? Outdoorsy. SUVs are marketed for going off-road, towing a boat, or for going camping. But in reality, 75% of light truck owners tow something once a year or less, and 70% go off-road once a year or less. In fact, the vast majority of SUVs are driven in cities and will never go off-road. They are just used for everyday tasks like commuting and buying groceries. Well, I guess they go off-road when the driver is texting and plows into a building or something. The most outdoorsy people I've met, those who regularly go hiking or camping, drive something like a Subaru Outback wagon because they're actual adventurous people, not just a bunch of posers in SUVs. And Americans seem to think you need some giant truck to tow anything, but you see all kinds of regular cars with trailers in Europe. And the Dutch in particular are famous for vacationing with their caravans pulled by normal cars. Though this recent example was extreme even by Dutch standards. And the reactions to this video will be extremely predictable. People will inevitably claim that these SUVs and pickup drivers need that space for all the stuff they're hauling. That somehow SUVs and pickup trucks went from niche rural vehicles to literally the most popular vehicles on the road because of some magical demographic shift that turned every American suburbanite into this guy. Wait, why does he have 6 fingers? And if you do live in a rural area, you might need to drive a light truck, and obviously that's fine and I don't care. But we're talking about suburbia here, and come on. You know as well as I do that the vast majority of drivers in these light trucks are carrying exactly two things: their briefcase and their fat ass, and most people don't use a briefcase anymore. This is particularly true with so-called luxury SUVs. We all know these aren't hauling shit, right? And the Mercedes G-Wagon has to be the absolute dumbest luxury vehicle ever made. I can just imagine the conference room at Mercedes when these were designed.
How ugly, uncomfortable, and inefficient can we make this thing and still have these rich Volltrottel buy it?
We can't just ignore this and say it's personal choice, because SUVs are a huge problem for cities. Oversized SUVs take up more space and make congestion worse. Longer vehicles mean fewer cars get through a light, which means more people gunning it to get through a yellow or red and subsequently slamming into more people trying to cross the street. And parking, which is already disastrous in cities, is even worse because of SUVs, which take up more space at the curb. London, that's real London, is having problems with street parking because SUVs are getting longer so fewer parked vehicles can fit on a street. Hell, even in fake London, these stupid things don't even fit in the giant parking spaces. So new parking spots in new developments are being made bigger, which means bigger parking lots and even more paved surfaces in our cities. And you'll often find light trucks parked in driveways because they don't fit in a typical garage. SUVs are wider too. Look at how much less space a cyclist has in a world full of light trucks. And the cyclist can't see or be seen over the roof of the truck either.
So scary.
These vehicles make the streets more dangerous for everyone outside of a car and put even more pressure on already crowded city streets. Of course, SUVs don't just hit people in bike lanes or crosswalks. Their off-road capability means it's easier for them to jump the curb and hit people on the sidewalk where they're supposed to be safe. It's very likely that more SUVs on the road is a significant factor in the recent increase in pedestrian deaths in the USA, a trend that's not being seen in countries with sane vehicle sizes. And SUVs aren't just killing the people they run into, they're also doing it through pollution. The auto industry specifically promoted SUVs to avoid CAFE emission standards. It's so bad that SUVs are the second largest factor in the rise in emissions from 2010 to 2018. And if SUVs were a country, they would rank 7th in the world for carbon emissions, which is more than the Netherlands and UK combined. Okay, I really don't want to think about the Netherlands and the UK combined. SUV apologists like to point out that modern SUVs are more fuel efficient than early models, but that comes from overall improvements in technology thanks to advancements in materials and manufacturing. But a big heavy SUV is always going to use more fuel and have higher emissions than the same technology applied to a lighter car. This is just basic physics. It takes more work to move something heavier. This is going to cause a huge problem with the necessary transition to electric vehicles too.
That car's kind
Because
of cool
the heavier
looking.
the vehicle, the more batteries are required to move it, and the bigger and heavier those batteries need to be. For the electric Hummer, the batteries alone weigh more than an entire typical European car. A few years ago, I made a video about the adoption of electric microcars here in the Netherlands. And I often see light electric trucks like these on the streets as well. But the gut reaction from many North Americans is to call these death machines. But why? It's because North Americans have been conditioned to believe that you need a large, heavy vehicle in order to be safe on the roads. We should be moving to lighter electric vehicles that require smaller batteries with better range, lower cost, and fewer resources needed to make them, but we're going in exactly the opposite direction, where even the smallest Tesla has a curb weight of over 1,600 kilograms, significantly more than a similarly sized Toyota Yaris sedan. And okay, I gotta say, what the hell is up with the sport in sport utility vehicle? Are we really that stupid? There is absolutely nothing sporty about any of this. Oh yeah, feel the burn. So at this point in the video, I've likely pissed off every truck owner and they're furiously writing long, angry comments about how they absolutely require an SUV for whatever reason. So let's say you live somewhere car dependent. You have 2.3 kids, routinely need to stop by Home Depot, and you want to head out into the wilderness more than once a decade.
Where's
Well,
the point
I've
three?
got good news because I've got the perfect vehicle for you: a station wagon. The thing that literally every family used before auto manufacturers convinced people to buy the light trucks that made them more money. That's an estate car for all you Brits out there. Station wagons are more useful than SUVs for almost everyone in a city. They're easier to get in and out of, they're more maneuverable, and much easier to park in cities where, again, almost all SUV driving takes place. SUVs are built to be cool and curvy so that aging Gen Xers can pretend they never became parents, but this means that the actual usable space inside is shockingly low. The monstrously large Cadillac Escalade has 25.5 cubic feet of carrying space behind the last row of seats, which is less than something like a Subaru Outback or Audi A6 Allroad, both of which have over 30. But the numbers are deceiving because the fancy design means the usable space in an Escalade is surprisingly small. Of course, you can take out the rear seats of an Escalade, but you can fold down the seats of a station wagon too. SUVs hold much less than you'd think because so much space is wasted by fancy styling, unnecessarily high ground clearance, car smashing bumpers, and pedestrian killing hoods. And of course, I'm not saying that you can't carry stuff in an Escalade, only that you don't need an Escalade to carry stuff. Have you ever tried to move a bunch of stuff with a station wagon? I have many times. It's a wide open rectangular cuboid of spacious goodness. A station wagon is a superior vehicle for families: more storage space, better fuel efficiency, and plenty of room for kids, which is why they're still very common in Europe. The reason you don't see station wagons in the US anymore is because automakers could make more money convincing Jennifer, Mike, Dave, Amy, and Kimberly that station wagons were uncool, because apparently this is cool. And if you really need a
Station
lot of
wagons
space
are
or extra
cool.
seating on a regular basis, a minivan beats an SUV every time. I've seen this
My mom had
myself
a
when we once
minivan.
booked a large taxi to the airport and they sent a Suburban. Our luggage wouldn't even fit in the back and we had to put some of it on our laps. But when we got to our destination, our taxi was a minivan and everything fit comfortably in the back. A minivan will hold more stuff, and it's easier for passengers to get in and out of too because the doors are bigger and it's lower to the ground. But after a few decades, Americans are getting bored of SUVs, so automakers are trying to promote pickup trucks as the new family vehicle, which is even more ridiculous. At least SUVs had a cover over your cargo. Of course, Ford knows this is ridiculous too. While they were promoting the F-150 pickup to Americans as the perfect family vehicle, they used the exact same marketing language to market the 7-seat S-Max to Europeans, because European regulations make it harder to profit from upselling people to light trucks.
That looks so much cooler.
Let's be really clear here.
IMO.
American automakers are not promoting SUVs and pickup trucks because they're practical. They do it because it makes them more money. It's very apparent in Europe that actual tradespeople, the people who actually need a vehicle with lots of space on a regular basis, almost universally choose vans. A typical European van will easily carry more than a pickup truck and certainly more than an SUV, and the lower bed is easier to load too. I really struggle to understand how a DHL delivery driver can do his job with a Kangoo van, but a middle-aged suburbanite thinks they need a Chevy Silverado to buy groceries. And to be fair, these vans can get quite big, but that space is used to make it efficiently carry lots of stuff. And they still have a design that is safer in a crash and gives the driver good visibility, proving that it is possible to provide all the goods and services a city needs without needlessly murdering people. One of these vehicles is designed to efficiently carry lots of useful stuff, while the other is designed to carry fragile egos. And I'm not even going to go into the fact that so many
SUV
professionals here in
drivers.
the Netherlands, whether they're a handyman or doing package delivery, can do their job just fine using cargo bikes. A pickup truck is mostly useful if you're loading heavy, dirty items into the bed, like on a farm or construction sites, so outside of the US, that's usually the only place you'll find them. For almost any other use case, for moving people or cargo, a van or minivan is a better option. And the thing that frustrates me the most about all this is that when city advocates complain about the insane growth in oversized trucks in our cities, a bunch of people come out of the woodwork claiming that those drivers really need that cargo space. But consider that the Ford F-150 was the single most popular vehicle sold in America in 2022. Literally number one. Yet 40 years ago, in 1982, the number one vehicle was the Ford Escort. Are you seriously telling me the cargo hauling behavior of Americans has changed that much in 40 years? Are you really proposing that all of these empty pickup trucks you see all over the US and Canada with pristine shiny tailgates are just extremely careful construction workers that just happen to be between loads? Or is it the much more likely explanation that these people have been upsold on these vehicles by automakers looking to skirt regulations to make higher profits? In fact, these pickup trucks have become heavier and less practical over the past 40 years. This Axios article is a great read, link in the description, but the best part is this graphic showing how the size of the truck bed has changed over the years. These are clearly morphing from practical farm vehicles into status symbols for insecure suburbanites with a cargo fetish. And to be perfectly blunt, it's pretty insulting to our intelligence to suggest that all these new pickup trucks are really needed for hauling. But as extended cab pickups become the new suburban assault vehicles to whine moms everywhere, there's been a surge in interest in older pickup models as actual contractors seek vehicles that are more practical. They're easier to load because they're lower to the ground, easier to maneuver and park at job sites, and the size of the bed is usually larger too. You can still order a new pickup with a longer bed, but they're a special order that can take months to arrive, while you can drive an extended cab pickup off the lot today. The only guy who shows up on the job site in the shiny new
F-150 Raptor Super Crew
is the owner's son who's cosplaying as a blue-collar laborer. So SUVs and light trucks are oversized impractical vehicles which were heavily marketed to impressionable people because they make more money for automakers by skirting regulations.
Okay, so there's a bit. The best part will be... Okay, I can't just move my camera. The best part will be the people who are upset that the stock video isn't actually an F-150 Raptor Super Crew. That's funny.
While the average SUV buyer in the early 2000s was likely a sociopath and or easily manipulated by marketing, nowadays, it's not so clear. American automakers have literally turned off the production of station wagons, sedans, and smaller vehicles to focus almost exclusively on the more lucrative market for light trucks. People argue that consumers prefer SUVs and automakers are just responding to demand, but that demand is coming off the back of billions of dollars in advertising and marketing pushed because SUVs are artificially cheaper than they should be thanks to the light truck exemption. And as the road safety arm race makes vehicles bigger, people are rationally concerned about their safety and gravitate toward larger vehicles to protect themselves. So a new class of vehicle has emerged, the crossover, which is an SUV built on a car frame instead of a truck frame. But fundamentally, these are just cars that are bigger than they need to be. Cars with more ground clearance than is necessary, cars with a higher bumper than is safe, cars with lower fuel economy than if they were lighter. But they're popular because people are rightfully scared about sharing the road with giant SUVs and pickup trucks. So I can't really blame Americans for wanting to buy SUVs and crossovers today. I would probably do the same thing if I were forced to live somewhere like this. Of course, the most vulnerable people are those who can't participate in the arms race, everyone who's not in a car. So what are we going to do about it? The first solution is to close the light truck loophole that allows these ridiculous vehicles on the road in the first place. Light trucks should be required to meet all the same safety standards as every other passenger vehicle, and they need to be safer in crashes, lighter, and have much better fuel economy. Unfortunately, the recent changes to the CAFE standards in 2021 still have the light truck exemption in place. And even some crossovers like the Honda CR-V and Toyota RAV4 can be put in the light truck category, depending on how they're configured. The US could also remove the import restrictions and duties on light trucks that are still around today. They're the reason why you won't see smaller, more practical, foreign built trucks like these in American cities. And you won't see these small electric trucks coming to market there either. What's also desperately needed for all vehicles is for pedestrian crash tests and crash compatibility to have a more prominent role in determining safety ratings. And now that light trucks are mainstream vehicles, they should be tested for safety and fuel efficiency the exact same way that other vehicles are. For example, in the US, the frontal crash tests done by the NHTSA are only done with vehicles in the same weight class. Why do we accept this? It's not like SUVs have their own class of roads. All vehicles share the same roads, so they should all be crash compatible with one another. I'd like to see different classes of vehicles tested against each other and to dock points if a vehicle causes significant damage to vehicles of another class.
It's very
Cities in
disturbing.
particular should be doing a lot more to regulate SUVs. They go against every goal that cities have: to reduce the effects of climate change, to reduce pedestrian deaths, to reduce traffic, to maintain roads, and to make best use of the limited space available. Cities should tax vehicles by weight and limit vehicles with bumpers that are too high, or require commercial driver's licenses to operate them. Parking permits for longer vehicles should be more expensive to compensate for the lost space. Licensing and insuring SUVs should be more expensive too. And since a big part of road safety is the kinetic energy of the crash, which comes from mass and velocity, then if the weight keeps increasing, we should be decreasing the speed. In other words, cities can and should be lowering speed limits in response to heavier vehicles. These are all great ideas, but right now, cities are doing basically nothing to stop the spread of SUVs and pickup trucks. Here in the Netherlands, cars are taxed more depending on their weight, but the increase is minimal. And North American cities are doing even less. Washington, D.C. will introduce a higher vehicle registration fee for heavier vehicles, but this only applies to the absolute highest weight class of over 6,000 pounds. So with effectively nothing being done to slow the adoption of heavier vehicles, some people are taking matters into their own hands. A group calling themselves the Tire Extinguishers have started deflating the tires of SUVs in Europe.
That's
It's
insane.
unclear whether this is a crime.
Their stated goal is to make it impossible to own an SUV in the city. Now, obviously, this is really extreme behavior, but let's be clear. This group only exists because of the complete and utter regulatory silence that has come from city and federal governments when it comes to curbing the problems caused by SUVs in cities. And even if the US is too far gone, European cities need to deal with this issue immediately. SUVs and crossovers now account for 40% of all vehicles sold in the EU, a 900% increase since 2001. I don't think Europeans realize how bad this can get. I hear people justifiably complaining about the infestation of giant Land Rovers in European cities. But look at how small this Range Rover looks next to a full-sized American SUV. Europe needs to get ahead of SUVs and pickup trucks now before more Europeans end up under them. Fundamentally, SUVs are a plague on cities. They're impractical, dangerous, expensive, and polluting, but car manufacturers have spent billions of dollars to convince you to think otherwise. Don't fall for it. Let your local representatives know you're not okay with these suburban assault vehicles taking over our roads. Ultimately, this really is about freedom. The freedom to get around however we want. The freedom to drive a small and efficient car without worrying about the road safety arms race. Or even better, the freedom to not to have to drive, to get around by walking, cycling, and public transit without the constant threat of serious injury or death from bloated, oversized trucks. And finally, since the typical light truck driver is so status obsessed, let's use that to our advantage. So when you see someone driving a truck like this, let them know they look like a f***ing idiot. Get a station wagon, loser. If you've made it this far into the video without rage quitting, then you might just be ready to learn more about good urbanism. It's not about hating cars, it's about building wonderful cities that are designed for people.
You never really
Though,
lead into the
admittedly,
hating
the
bit
smaller
of
the
it.
cars, the better. But you don't just have to take my word for it.
Which is
Online
funny.
urbanism has become a movement, and we're spoiled for choice when it comes to great creators these days. And did you know that many of these urbanist creators are on Nebula?
Oh, the ad
The most
read.
recent addition is City Nerd, who makes weekly video essays about cities in the US and abroad. And if you like this video, you'll enjoy his video about pickup trucks in the US. You'll also find RM Transit, a Toronto based creator who makes videos about, you guessed it, transit, as well as City
Oh,
Beautiful, a channel run by an actual urban planning professor in California. Watching these creators on Nebula is the best way to support their work, and you'll also get access to Nebula Plus content, like the City Beautiful series Great Cities, about some of the greatest cities in the world, a series that's only available on Nebula. A subscription to Nebula gives you access to over 150 other creators who make videos and podcasts, all ad-free and sponsor-free. You'll also get access to Nebula Classes, which used to be a paid add-on but is now included for free if you use the link in the description. Classes are a great way to learn from your favorite creators about something they're an expert in or something they're passionate about. My own videos are also released on Nebula first, several days ahead of their release on YouTube, and of course, without any ads. If this sounds good to you, then sign up at
oh.
go.nebula.tv/notjustbikes for a discount and get all of Nebula, including classes, for as little as $30 per year.
I signed up for
Thanks so much to
Nebula,
Nebula for supporting this channel.
but it was
I'd
too
also
hard
like to
to
thank my
like change
supporters
my
on
viewing
Nebula and
habits
Patreon who
to
pay
stay
me
on
to piss off
YouTube.
everyone in Texas. If you'd like to support the channel, visit nebula.tv/notjustbikes or patreon.com/notjustbikes.
This is a cool video. I definitely want to react to more of this guy's content because I like this kind of topic. I'm very curious to like learn more about urbanism and walkable cities because I like cities that I can walk in. Walking places is really fun. Um, I definitely think like so the reason this video got recommended to me was because we watched the stupid AI products video or whatever by Danny Gonzalez, which covered like the Cybertruck. So I feel like the problem has probably just gotten worse since this video released. Which is really unfortunate because I definitely like get scared when I'm walking next to a giant car. Um, I remember like when I was in high school when one of my friends got like one of those big like SUVs. Um, and like they got it for like safety purposes, right? But like literally like the day one of them getting it was them just talking about wow, it is kind of difficult to see out of this thing. Um, but yeah, it feels really real. I wonder what car they're on nowadays. I think they got a smaller car after that. Um, but yeah, like it's one of those things where there's like perverse incentives that end up creating an artificial demand or like desire to supply, specifically in this case, um, a certain type of car, right? And because like they can also have a higher profit margin on it, they can also make it cheaper than it would be otherwise, which makes people buy it more than other alternatives. And it's not like really people's fault, right? Because like they're just responding to what is the more on paper financially better choice. Now, this is financially better because like gas prices are lower in the US than they are in other places because um like a lot of what the video said, like these SUVs and light trucks are artificially cheaper due to the regulations being different. So it's like a real problem. It's really interesting. Um, I really like stuff like this. One thing that really bothers me is that I'm blinded by headlights during nighttime driving because every car on the road is higher than mine. Real. I have a small car. I relate to that. Not that small, but like a standard like four-door like car. You know that was it's like a 2010 or whatever. It's a little newer than that, but the true irony is that full-size SUVs are more common in a city than in rural areas. Real. Friend's daughter, school teacher, was T-boned by a full-size pickup. The its high front bumper hit her at shoulder height. That's insane. That's the driver of the truck walked away claiming the sun was in his eyes. I mean, maybe it was, but like, why? Why are you? There's. Oh, I just heard two different stories at once. Whoops. But yeah, like this is insane. Okay, actually no, I didn't. But yeah, and then like there's this story. Like, what the heck? I'm upset. Yay, smaller car. Yay. Good job, person. One of those niche girl light truck drivers. I don't understand why anyone who doesn't need one would want one. They don't fit in garages, eat gas like a bottomless pit, and are so much harder to park and maneuver. Yeah, like I remember like when my friend got that car in high school, I was like, I can never have one of these cars because I do not. I want to have like an easy car to maneuver. Like that was my that was my concern. Um, but yeah, I haven't really been in the market for a new car since, but I definitely have a different desire than what 80% of new car buyers seem to have at the moment. Most of my coworkers that buy these monstrosities or look down at my small car and say they buy them so they can drive over cars like mine. And I find, locally at least, people do drive them like weapons, or at least with reckless abandon. It makes driving to work more anxiety inducing than it already was. Some people have really weird, like, opinions around this kind of stuff. So yeah, I see that. Um uh, Alligators climb extremely well. I didn't know that. I live in Florida and I didn't know that. My fault. Estate cars, station wagons have another key advantage over SUVs. Their roofs are lower. Ah, so it's easier to put stuff on the roof. That makes so much sense. And you can sleep in them. Ooh. Oh. Yeah, Marty does get a big car, doesn't he? Okay. Yeah, this is covered. This is like covered a little bit how like electric cars are chasing the bigger is better trend in the video. Not like a super like cooler topic of the video, but it is mentioned. But yeah, thank you for watching, folks. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Um, yeah, or life, or noon, or like night, or whatever. Yeah. Ooh. Thank. Bye. Hey folks, thank you for watching the video. Remember to like it, follow on YouTube, subscribe on Twitch, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.